Assalamu alaikum. Hope you can hear me. Okay, I see we've got a handful of people that have joined the stream already, and I look forward to the next hour or so. We'll see how it goes. I'm doing a trial run with you this evening without any guest speaker. I'm hoping that you will be joining me, that there will be some of you that will be able to call in or send me your messages or via WhatsApp. The WhatsApp number is there. Maybe I should give it to you again. And other than that, I've got a bunch of things that I'd like to go through with you. Maybe a recap of some of the material that I've been able to go through during the past week, as well as some of the material that I've been presenting to you this week, maybe in the past 2 weeks, and then some of the maybe more broader developments that are taking place. So I look forward to sharing with you. Key thing is I'd love to hear from you, so if you'd like to send me a message, let me just quickly type you a WhatsApp number in so that you are able to WhatsApp me also if you are inclined to that. 76114. So that I'm going to make the WhatsApp number appear now on the screen, and then you are most welcome to send me a WhatsApp. Even better, if you want to give me a call, I don't have high tech. I'll put the device to the mic, and everyone will be able to hear you, and you'll be able to really let everyone hear your view on any matter that you like. So let me just quickly put in there. Right, so I think there's a few people now, so I'm going to so the WhatsApp number is there, so feel free to WhatsApp me. But also you can send me a message on if you have the feature on your phone, just open up the chat, and you can also chat via the chat with me. And so it'll be great to have some of your ideas also coming through. So yeah, what are we going to deal with? I thought to myself that when you have a live stream, do you really want to go through serious material? Do you really want to make it extremely heavy, And I thought to myself, no, man, I think that's not the only way to learn. We don't just learn by getting lectures and talking and serious business. We also learn by lightening up a bit. And so I thought, let's lighten up. Let's tell some stories, and then maybe in between I'll throw you some important ideas also that might be relevant to the discussion. So that's what I was thinking. So let's quickly maybe see what we can do to start with. All right, to start with, I think it's important that I again give you a synopsis of where this channel, or where the core ideas of this channel are really going, and to summarize them to some extent. So you've seen a lot of YouTube videos, and there's a million channels that tell you about how to be a good Muslim and about Islam. And let me start where I want to maybe come to the motivation. Why are people going to YouTube? Why do people search for religious material? Why do people find, speakers and scholars and priests and whoever to speak, to listen to? And my impression, the impression that I have, is that every person goes to YouTube with his own need. And some of us have a need. Our needs are obviously rooted in our experiences, right? So if you're a woman experiencing a particular reality, and normally we are driven to seek out ideas and seek out people when we are facing some sort of a problem or a crisis or an issue that is making us feel uncomfortable, right? And so when you feel hit by something that is maybe slightly uncomfortable for you, that you have a problem with processing or dealing with, then you tend to go and seek out some ideas, and you tend to what you really want to achieve. So I'm just getting an error here from YouTube. I hope we're not gonna get a bad connection, but if just let me know in the chat if you have any problems that you might experience. So far so good though. So every person is driven to seek out information, seek out people's opinions, seek out other people's views, and that is what we call I think a communicative reflexive response, right? In sociology, or in social realism, is that people are trying to see what other people think, and whether they are alone in their crisis, or people share that crisis, or are there maybe people that have dealt with this crisis. And so every person, as Muslims, and I think I'm speaking particularly to that segment of people, maybe some non-Muslims, but I think essentially we're dealing with Muslims. What Muslims do is they also face crises of various forms, and maybe a woman's experience, maybe a man, maybe an identity problem, where you have to live as a Muslim and you're living in an environment that is really hostile to Islam. And so the background to this, so this video or this channel takes a particular approach, and that is the Muslim identity and the Muslim purpose, the purpose and the identity of a Muslim. And we look what, because it is aligned with the research that I did when I did some serious research a few years back. I looked at people's emotions, people's response, and how people react to identity. Simply take a pause for a few seconds. I wish you just bear with me. I just want to find out if I can maybe improve the quality of the stream slightly. Give me a few seconds. I'm going to just put you on hold for a few seconds. Okay. So what I was saying was that we are dealing. My research essentially was on the issue of identity, and identity which is closely related to the purpose and the core values or core concerns of every person. And the reason why people come to YouTube or come to lectures or come to people who you know, give opinions and ideas is because they're basically trying to readjust their own value system. They're trying to readjust their own identity, and because value system is very closely attached to identity. Whether, I don't know if you've ever thought about it. If you'd like somebody to define you in a few sentences, you'd probably like that person to hit on the core issues that you really believe in or really feel strongly about. And those ideas would be ideas like your religious identity, your social identity. So in other words, you would dress, you would appear in a certain way that would make you appear to come from a certain social background. Your language, your appearance, the aesthetics that you. And so those are the things that are really important to you, and those are the things that shape your identity. And that is why people go and they try and reinforce that identity, or if they feel that identity is under threat or that they are not comfortable with that identity, they then seek means of adjusting or revisiting their identity. And that is really an important part of why people go to YouTube and try and listen and engage with others. Now, bringing that whole argument to the religious understanding of Islam, I've pretty much been there, and my main focus or my main intention was always to be a good Muslim, to satisfy the requirements to be counted as a good Muslim. And that was the whole purpose of my existence, I guess, besides other things, besides being successful, maybe financially, or at least to be able to function independently, to have a good family, to have love and, a supporting environment. But I think the important thing was also to be a good person. And for me, being a good person meant being a good Muslim. I couldn't see that there was any other avenue or other really tried and tested or proven way of being a good person. Now, okay, I'm not saying, and I never thought that other people can't be good people, but I just thought that the general appearance, what I see generally from Muslim people, is something that I like when I see it, because I draw comparisons, and as a young man I drew comparisons between the experience that I have, the life I have, the home I have, and the home that people have that maybe not adhere to the Muslim way or to the Islamic religion. And so that drawing those comparisons, it makes you think. But look, they might have, you think in all innocence, but they have bigger issues than we have, and I think a lot of the issues that they have is because they don't have some of the core values or core beliefs that my family has. And so you make that choice and you make that judgment as a child already. And so that is why I always felt that being a Muslim is the safest way to being a happy, fulfilled person in this world. And then of course there's the promise of the year after, and you can, whatever you do here will count to your benefit in the year after. And So those are the things that almost convinced me that Islam was good. But then, as time goes by, you experience the crisis that I spoke about now. And I reached that crisis point more or less when I was in high school towards matric, that I reached that crisis point when I looked at not just at my happiness or at my nice home and at my home that doesn't have a divorce case or a drunken dad or a mother that is conflicted or brothers that are. I then looked around me and I saw the landscape beyond my immediate environment, and that landscape was one that was depressing. You saw people that were sort of in a desperate state, not just non-Muslims, Muslims also. And you start thinking, but now, why is it that my life is nice and I'm comfortable, but there are people around that are really in a desperate state? And I must say, when I visited a really poor African township for the first time, it had a major impact on me. We have some very desperate communities in South Africa. And when I saw it, I almost felt sick for a few days, because I couldn't get it off my mind, the dehumanization that was going on and the way that people were living. And obviously the mainstream narrative, when you see people in a state of severe neglect, severe alienation, the narrative that is given to you is that, look, if they wanted to, they could be successful. They are just basically not working hard enough. They must stop drinking. They must stop all their immoral behavior, and then they will also be, get the type of happiness that other people have. And that is the narrative that you get told. And you cling to that narrative because that narrative makes you feel kind of absolved from the problem of other people, and you think to yourself, okay, look, that's true. They got to pull up their socks. They got to stop drinking. They got to stop having so many children sleeping around, and that's kind of the explanation you give yourself to absolve yourself from really feeling a sense of responsibility. So that was the one crisis that it was, to see that people are really having a tough time financially, socially, and that why do I not have a role to play? Then what happened is, during that crisis of identity, or that crisis of purpose, I was fortunate enough to meet people who were actively engaged in the struggle, like people like Ahmed Qasim, who I featured on this channel, and people similar to him who advanced the idea that Islam is in fact not a religion for personal salvation. It is actually a religion that is for the salvation of humanity, and that every human being has a responsibility not just for his own salvation, but also to save those around him, and to save them in terms of freeing them from their bondage. And whether that bondage is a personal sense of failure, whether that bondage is an external form of enslavement, whatever means or form that bondage takes, is what Islam is encouraging you, is to free those people. And these teachings were not just brought about out of thin air. These guys like Ahmed Qasim, like people like, I read the books of Ayatollah Khomeini, I read the books of Ali Shariati in the late 70s. I read some of the other books of Maududi. I read the books of Hassan al-Banna. I read the books of Sayyid Qutb, Milestones, and a number of books and literature that seem to speak about Islam not as a personal salvation, but as a platform from which to conduct a project of emancipation for all of humanity. And I really, that was my first major break with the traditional understanding is that we're not good or we're not observant people because we are trying to save ourselves, because that would create a very elitist outlook for Islam. But we are good for the purpose of trying to be an exemplar, to be somebody that could be a good role model or a working example of what it is to be upright morally. And so that is kind of like how that panned out. But so my first move was to become extremely rigid and to become extremely robust in my observance of the way that the scholars or the revolutionaries were treating Islam. And so I became kind of very forceful about what does the Qur'an say, what does the Hadith say. We have to do it exactly as it says there. We need to be perfect role models. And then you look at every time somebody comes with a Hadith, they tell you, look, you got to carry your beard long, you got to keep your hand here, so then you grow a long beard. Somebody comes along and he tells you, look here, your pants mustn't be dragging in the floor, and then you like go and cut off your pants, and and I remember being influenced by the Islamic Revolution. Let me tell you this funny story. I was may Allah bless her soul, my mother was the sweetest, kindest, most loving person that I ever met. And there's the story when I was quite revolutionary, some kind of very hard on implementing the ideas of the Hadith and the Qur'an, mostly the Hadith. And under influence from the revolution in Iran in 1979, I told my mom, look, I'm done with this bed in the room. And she was asking me why, and I said, no, how can I sleep in comfort and other people are not having anything to sleep on? And I insisted I'm going to get rid of the bed, and the next day the bed was out. And then she looked at me and she thought, well, it's a wild thing now, it's a crazy idea, but let's just leave him. And so I decided to sleep on the floor. I remember I had a Palestinian scarf, and there was a carpet in the room, and I put the Palestinian scarf on the carpet, and that was my bed. And I slept on that bed, and it was quite hard. And it was a bit tough the first few nights. It never really became easier. It always stayed quite tough sleeping on that fairly hard floor, the mat. And I remember, like, after a month or so, I really got sick of this floor because I didn't have that nice deep sleep at night. My bones would like get sore, and I just felt, shucks, I really bit off a bit too much now. And I think my mother observed me. She looked at me, and then after a few days, she saw me, like, she was just observing me from a distance. And then after a month or so, I came home one day, and from university, from campus, and I just noticed there was a brand new bed in my room, and I just said nothing. The bed was made up, nice blankets, and the covers were there, and I said nothing at all. I just basically went and got into that bed that night, and I had the best sleep I ever had in my whole life. I still remember that first night, and my mother never said anything, and I never said anything. That is how that turned out. But I'm just trying to illustrate to you, the harshness, this extreme seriousness with which I took this new adherence or observance of Islamic rules, because I was convinced, that if you're going to be a Muslim, you better do it the best possible way you can. And so I went for the detail. And the beard was there, the trousers were never dragging, threw the bed out at one stage because the Prophet never slept on a bed, remember? And so I went all the way. And I must say that was the main part of my life. Was went through my 20s, my 30s like that, and ended up in Egypt, North Africa, Egypt, Arab world, to try and take in more of this Islam, just trying to get more of this Islam. I was hungry, just to be more observant, want more hadiths, more sunnah. What am I not doing right? And I spoke to the scholars. I even had the scholars sleeping at my place. I was married by then. And I was like nights up sitting till 12 o'clock with the scholars, trying to ask them questions about, what is the best practice for this? What is, I had a hadith master who just returned from graduating at what is called a Darul Ulum or seminary in India somewhere, in Deoband. So I had a top notch hadith expert who just arrived in Egypt, and luckily for me, he knew a friend of mine, and they needed a place to stay, him and his wife, the hadith expert. In fact, the guy memorized the whole of Bukhari. Can you believe that? He was a Hafiz of Bukhari, the set of books this size. He was the Hafiz. And he stayed with us, and he slept in the next room. And they stayed with us for the better part of 6 months. He stayed with us. And I remember every night, he used to go out during the day. He had his own lectures. He was doing a master's degree at a special institution in Egypt. And he would come back in the afternoon, 5 o'clock, and I would be back that time. And then we would sit together. And from that time, I would start asking him questions, asking him, listen, what is the ruling on this? What is the ruling on that? We had books, and he would take me through those books, like fit books. I remember I had a book called Matan Abi Suja'a, I think, which is a fiqh book of the Shafi'i madhab. And he would go with me through this book and show me how to read a fiqh book. And that is besides the classes that I attended at the Al-Azhar. I had the luxury of this highly qualified, decorated, hadith scholar living right next door to me. And so we were spending nights and nights and nights asking him questions, and I'm just like, my aim was I need to be as best a Muslim, a practitioner of the Sunnah of Islam as I could possibly be. And remember, my mission was back home, I'd become a political activist. Islam is there to liberate humanity, but I need to be that model of a liberated person, which is a person that is conforms almost 100% as best as possible with the practice of the Prophet, which is the hadith. So that was how life went there, and I spent 2 years almost there, and had other people also that I sought out and chatted to, other friends and so on. And with the result that when I came home after a while, after 2 years or so, I looked quite the sight, because I had now transformed my appearance. I had a beard that came up till here, and I was generally just like a complete Sunni, as they say. And but because of my revolutionary rhetoric, I was like a person who follows the Sunnah, but for the purpose of being a troublemaker in my community. In other words, trying to go to townships, trying to speak to black African people about the revolutionary aspects of Islam. And so that wasn't well accepted in this community. Now, I must add that my community is a Sunni community, and I had also adopted or picked up some Shia ideas from Iran. And I, for example, had an idea that, the revolutionary Islam is more closer to Shia Islam. I thought Sunni Islam is more the Islam of the sultans, of the rulers, and Shia Islam is more the religion of those who challenge the sultans. Especially looking at the story of Karbala, looking at the battles of the Zaydi Imams, Muhammad Hanafiya, Imam Zayd, the brother of Muhammad Baqir, which is I think the brother or the son of Muhammad Baqir. And so I got the image that Islam is more revolutionary when it is in the Shia package. The Shia package makes it more revolutionary. But the Sunnah or the Hadith or the personal appearance, believe it or not, are very similar. So, about eating habits, appearance, etc. So it's amazing how much overlap there is between the two. And that is really the move I made to acquire that identity of a model Muslim, and in my mind I had the idea that is a model Muslim. The Hadith, the Sunnah, whether it is Shia, whether it is Sunni, and I kind of was straddling a bit there. I mean, there was a time when I shifted much more maybe to Shia Islam, but never really abandoning or trying to become a non-Sunni or completely rejecting Sunni. And I wrote 3 or 4 books on fiqh. I compiled 1 book on hadith, 40 hadith. I did a lesson plans for a madrasa. We established a school, a Muslim school, and I developed all the lesson plans for that school. And so it was it's quite it was very involved there. But let me cut now a bit out and move fast forward a bit. And why I'm doing this is I actually want you to see that you have your own, because I can't even think what you have gone through, how you have experienced your Islam or your commitment to your deen. And I'd love to hear, if any one of you would like to share some ideas, you're welcome to use the chat feature on YouTube, or just, leave me a message on WhatsApp or something. So the fast forward, let me get to a point where I just want to tell you that being a model person or a model Muslim, I obviously had to pitch myself to other model Muslims. I had to obviously gauge or align myself to other so-called model revolutionary Muslims. I think that, unfortunately, that is where this identity faltered, because I looked at the other model Muslims at some point, and I realized that there is no such a thing as a model Muslim, because model Muslims are bound to fail. They are bound to the standard that we have. The standard is just not. It's not. You can't consistently observe the standard. And there was something that happened. I won't go into detail with it, but something very, very severe that took place around 10 years ago. That actually, in my experience with Muslims, that are supposedly role models, that just shook my foundations. My whole idea, my whole understanding of Islam just got a massive sort of shaking, and something just rattled everything I thought I knew. And also, you see, the question was, is the Muslim community the perfect community? And I was seeing people who were actually amazing people who were not Muslim, who were actually more exemplary in terms of being decent people to fellow humanity. And I then started, and I remember this, a good friend of mine told me, I said to him, look, I'm really battling the balance. Where does it lie between practice and reality? Because we have to practice and we have a reality. And I remember this friend of mine told me, have you ever maybe read the Qur'an in detail and and see whether the practice that you are trying to establish, whether it is in agreement with the Qur'an? And I thought, I've never actually read the Qur'an with that kind of intention. I've always read the Qur'an as like an addendum to the Hadith, believe it or not. That is how we are taught. We read the Qur'an not as the core text, but as an extension of the Hadith. So you shape your personality, your identity from the Hadith, which is what the Maulanas and the Sheikhs speak. And from that, from what they speak, most of the time, which is Hadith and interpretations of the Qur'an, you then look at the Qur'an. And so I decided to look at the Qur'an. What I found was, for the first time, because luckily by that time, I had a fairly decent understanding of the language, of the Arabic language, and I realized if you read the Qur'an, you actually get a different image of the deen of Islam. And you must just try this if you haven't tried it. If you read the Qur'an, if you read it with meaning and with understanding, and you don't filter the Qur'an through with hadith. So in other words, if the Qur'an speaks about a concept, the splitting of the moon, or the seven heavens, or whatever. You see, we've always been programmed that when you read the words, then the hadith is the explanation. So you don't do any reflection. You basically just have a footnote under every verse, and the footnote is, this is what this verse means. You read the next verse, and it says in the tafsir books, this is what this verse means. So you never really get to reflect on a verse. You read the verse, and the thinking has been done for you already. But I parked the thinking, and I thought, no man, maybe the meaning should be self-contained, because some of the meanings are quite uncomfortable. Like, for example, if you read the Quran, it says you got to beat your wife, or you've got to take slaves, or you've got to kill people, crucify people. Now, the meaning there is not the meaning that we get from reading the verse, it's the meaning that is attached, that is the footnote. So when people say anything, let's say the Quran speaks about the splitting of the moon, then when you are let me just quickly give an answer here. I'm getting a question. So I looked at the Quran, I thought, listen man, I'm not comfortable with some of the saying or with some of the ideas that are being imposed on the Quran, right? For example, concubines, for example, beating wife, or there were other things that were like fairly difficult to align with. Look, if the Quran said it and you accept the Quran, then it's fine. Then there was also the idea of contradictions in the Quran. The Muslims were kind of comfortable with living with contradictions in the Quran. So they would give a meaning of a verse here, like liquor is, you don't go to Salah in a drunken state. And then in another place it would say that wine is haram. Or here it will say your will your will and testament, you are free to allocate your wealth or your legacy or your estate in any fair way you see fit. And then there's another verse that says your legacy or your estate needs to be divided in a very formulaic way. And a second. So the contradictions was a bit tough to handle, and also the clashes with my established value system, and that is where the urge or the need came in to really read it with my own understanding and not through the filter of hadith. And that is what I did. And in the end, I must say the experience was mind-blowing, that's to say the least. I embarked on a project after about 2-3 years after rereading the book about 10 years ago. I decided, listen, I'm going to put my reading on paper because I need to test the reading that I get from the words with people who can tell me that you are reading it wrong or you are reading it right. And that is why I came to start putting my reading down in English. And I've thus far gotten to about 2,000 something, a third of the Qur'an that I've actually put into English, and that is the translation that I often use on this channel, as you would see when I do some of the videos, is the meaning that or the translation that I see when you go faithfully according to the book, and so summary, what I found was that the fact of the matter is that what dawned on me was that we have a mistaken understanding of what Islam really is about. We have a seriously mistaken understanding. There's the need for tahqiq or for tasdeeq or for revision of our understanding, not of the Quran. The Quran is cast in, gold and concrete for forever and ever. But there is a need for us to reread, and how that need, some of the core ideas in the Quran, like for example, the idea of a mu'min. What is your understanding of a mu'min? Your understanding of a mu'min, if you go by what your madrasa taught you, is just a believer, a person with very strong belief in Allah, right, in God. But if you really contextualize it historically, then it's got a much more mundane meaning, and that is probably one of the key words in the Quran. A mu'min comes from the word amana, which means to be safe, right? Amana means to be safe. Amana means to make somebody safe, because when you take any Arabic word and you add an alif and you take away the second vowel, like kataba, aktaba, or fa'ala, af'ala, then it becomes a transitive verb. The word then becomes not to do the act, but to let the act be done. So that is how Arabic works in sarf. And so the mu'min is the one that makes somebody have peace. But also, mu'min can also be somebody who is safe, who is himself at peace, who puts himself at ease, makes himself feel safe. And so the idea of a mu'min is more than just somebody with iman. It is somebody that is vouching for something, that is conceding, that is surrendering, or that is almost like giving somebody his due, right? So making somebody feel safe, giving them their due, conceding to them that is all shades of meaning in the word mu'min. In the context of the Prophet, alayhi salam, what a mu'min is somebody that actually conceded to the Prophet. Right? Somebody that vouches for him, that affirms what he's saying. And so these are the terms then that I realized, these are actually terms that are very, very real terms. They're not real. They're terms that go back to the Prophet. Other terms that came up was a term like, for example, salah, and there's a lot of contradictions if you take the word salah and you take all the instances of that word in the Qur'an out. You go from cover to cover and you take every instance where the word salah is used. You run into a problem, because the problem is that sometimes the word salah simply does not fit. The salat sometimes simply does not fit. Sometimes the salah is, the Quran says, the pagans used to make salah, or the Quran will say, the birds make salah. And those are verses that you can find in the Quran. Sometimes the Quran will speak about salahs, which is like synagogues. So how can one word mean so many things? And the challenge was to find some sort of coherence in the meaning. And then looking at other scholars, Arabic scholars, international scholars who are also sitting with the same work that I was doing, I learned from them that the word salah is a case of making the specific meaning the general meaning. So in other words, there's a specific instance, a specific case of salah. Now let's say the word salah means you are observant, observance, right? Abstract word, observance. Let's say that is let's look at the case of the word observance. Now if I want to say to you, listen, it's very important, you're going to join this new club, but it's very important that you abide by the rules. Right? You're joining this new club, but one of the important aspects of being a member of this club is you must be observant of the rules. What are the observant? What are what do I have to observe? The observance in this club means, whatever. Let's say it's a golf club. Is you can't come in here with like a t-shirt or with a sleeveless shirt. You can't come in here with swimming gear or not dressed in a way. So observance in the context of that club or that golf club means being observant of the rules. Right? Observance. But you could also use the word in a different sense. Like let's say you join a sports club. Right? Let's say you join a sports club, and they tell you, look, every week on a Monday we're going to observe a meeting. Right? Every Monday we observe a session where we like share ideas on strategy in the match. So we observe. You have to come to that observance session. Can you see what I'm getting at? Is that the word observance is an abstract word in the one sense, but when you come once a week for observance or for that session on how to observe, to learn how to observe the rules or how to do it, you have a specific case of observance. And so the meaning that the scholars, the revisionist scholars, discovered from the word salah is that it is actually an abstract word that has certain specific applications. So the word salah is on one or two occasions used along with the word sabr, which is patience. Ista'inu bis-sabri was-salat, the Quran says. So in other words, the word salah is often matched with the word sabr. And you can't say that yesterday morning I made sabr, 5 o'clock in the morning I made sabr. You understand what I'm saying? It's an abstract word. The word sabr is an abstract noun. It refers to something in the abstract. It is a phenomenon. It is a non-literal phenomenon. It is a trait. It's a practice in a very abstract way, right? The same with salah. So I just realized when I read the works of these scholars, that subhanallah, now suddenly the word salah is suddenly, it's decoded. And now I can realize that when Allah speaks about the birds making salah, yes, it's the birds observing. And because basically the word observance is very close to the word salah. I also use the word order. I also use the word connectivity. I also use the word law-abiding. I also use the word alignment. All these are words that relate to a group or a community who is working in tandem, working in serving the same or abiding by the same law book, the same rule book. Suddenly now you can see the birds make salah, yes, because the birds are abiding by the nature that they are given, or the birds are aligned to the nature that they were given, or the birds are in observance of the nature that they were given. So when Allah says the birds, each one has its own salah, it means that each one has its own nature. It's the way that it observes its own nature. And so suddenly the meaning is there. You know, when the Quran says that if had Allah not checked some people by means of others, then there would be no churches or synagogues or any of the sort would be left. But now if we want to see what the word, the Quran says, let me show you an example here. I've got a very practical example. Like Quran 22 verse 40 says, did Allah not check one set of people by means of another, there would surely have been pulled down monasteries, churches, synagogues. وَلَوْلَا دَفْعُ اللَّهِ النَّاسِ بَعْضَهُمْ بِبَعْضٍ لَهُدِّمَتْ صَوَامِعُ وَبِيعُ وَصَلَوَاتٍ. Then salawat would be destroyed. Now the word salah is there in that word, salawat. And obviously it doesn't, salawat, how can salawat suddenly become synagogues? And then, but if you say that observance or means of people connecting are damaged or are stopped when there's war, or when there's an unjust power that is ruling, then salawat in that sense, the ability of people to connect, to act in tandem is impeded. So just found that the meaning of the word salat comes out much more clearly when you actually don't make the word salah equivalent or equal to its specific case. Now, you know, when a group of people assemble, today is Friday, when you assemble in a mosque and you stand in tandem, shoulder to shoulder, you face in the same direction, you harmonize or you synchronize your movements. That is a specific example of salat. It is action that is in alignment, action that is uniform, action that is in mutual agreement. Right? It is a case of salat, but it is not salat in its general sense. And I hope I've brought that idea home for you, is that salah is another term that clearly that we have reduced, we have minimized the term. Now why do we have to, why is this important? Why is this important? The reason we have to do it is because the more we trivialize the Qur'an, the more we reduce the meaning, the less relevant we make the book. You see, if somebody reads the Qur'an and they see that salat, doing a physical qata, or a uniform movement, if somebody sees that that is one of the 5 pillars of Islam, does it make sense? I mean, having a uniform kata is like one of the cornerstones of Islam. Does it make sense? Not to me. Not to me. To have a uniform exercise does not solve really any problems for humanity. It makes us maybe feel that we are doing a good deed, but on the other hand, making a sense of order, human alignment, mutual alignment towards a common set of values, making that the understanding of Salah. The idea of an alignment, a general alignment, a general sense of observance to a common code. That, my friends, suddenly brings the term alive. And now you can see what the Quran is really saying when it speaks about Salah. It is referring to humanity becoming observant, humanity becoming aligned around a common set of values. So that, my friends, in brief, would be how one by one, and then you go to the next concept in the Quran and learn from other scholars who have gone ahead of me, and you just discover that this book is an amazing means of liberating all sections of mankind, of humanity, not just Muslims. You see, the main ideas of the Quran are appealing to anyone. Believe me, if you go to certain people, you tell them, listen, Islam says you must do every day 5 times this, or during Ramadan you got to do 20 times up and down. He's gonna worry. He's gonna say, but I've got a job to do. I can't, how's this gonna work with my work? I'm a whatever. I'm a surgeon in a hospital. It's a doctor in the emergency room. Are you telling me I need to break away every hour or something? How am I going to make to Travi? It becomes almost like an endurance test. It becomes a day. You know what's a day? Is, can you do this for 20 times? Can you eat a dozen eggs? Can you eat a whole loaf of bread? It's a day. And our God does not give us silly days. Because the story is the first time people learned about the Salah, they had to do it 50 times. It's like a day. It's a silly day. Whereas if you really look at the original meaning of the word Salah, it refers to the idea of being in alignment, being part of an order, being part of a system of adherence. And now it becomes much more doable, because now the emergency doctor, the doctor in the emergency ward, the teacher, the nursery school teacher, the street sweeper, the guys working sewage pipes, whatever, they have difficulty in doing wudu 5 times. But you tell them, no, that's not what Salah is. Salah is just to be an observant human being, to be part of an order, to inculcate the order, the code. And the code is not complex, it's not difficult to adhere to the code. The code in the Qur'an is very simple. The code in the Qur'an is very simple. The code mostly is a code to do with akhlaq, with relationships, with your relationship with other people, your wife, your parents, your community, your rulers, those who are weak and those who are strong. The code is addressing your behavior in your society. Open the Quran and see. I'm talking nonsense. The code is not talking about giving 5 camels or 4 camels or 3.5 goats sadaqah. The code is not about keeping your fingers in a particular way, and when you pray, or or your slave, how you measure your slaves, how you or how you must what kind of person is better, who's better, the person that's using this length stick or that is not in the code. It's the invented code. That's the invented code. The real code is very simple. Pick up the Quran, open anywhere, and see if you see any trivial nonsense. That code is an easy code. This code that people are telling you to abide by, to follow, to implement is a stupid code. It's not stupid for them, for people who lived at that time, to have dressed or acted or behaved or prayed or whatever in a certain way. It was good for them. It was good for them. I can't find fault with somebody that wants to write about camels or find camels important, because camels were everywhere. But I don't have any business with camels now. I don't have camels. I don't think I've ever seen a camel. I have actually ridden a camel in Egypt, but it's not important to me. So why am I seeing 7 types of water? That's the first fiqh that you are taught when you go to madrasa. They tell you these are the 7 types of water: spring water, well water, ocean, rivers, etc. They never tell you it must just be clean water. So it was relevant at that point, but you tell a person now that river water is clean, you can cause that person's death. Believe me. You tell a person now you can wash yourself in a river, because we actually have the phenomenon of polluted rivers. We have the phenomenon of polluted rivers that are polluted, that have all sorts of toxins and contaminants in. We have a lake here, Bass. It is maintained very well, but about 2 months ago or 6 months ago, I'm not sure, it was contaminated. There was a sewage spill in that lake. And so if you followed the fiqh of Abu Shuja, who says that river water is clean, because it's a river, it runs all the way into the ocean. If somebody tells you river water is clean and you would use that river, you would have been washing yourself in human feces, unfortunately. And so the the ideas, the details that the Arabs developed, because there's nothing wrong with it. It was suitable for their time. The code is the core. Code is at the heart of a Muslim. And that code is summarized in 6,200 verses. That is that code. You look at that code and it's simple. That code doesn't tell you that you are going to go to hell if you don't keep your toes in the right way. That code doesn't tell you you're going to hell if you talk ill of some guy, whoever who lived after the Prophet. Or that code doesn't tell you you are going to hell if you say that, the Qur'an is uncreated. Added, you see, they've added so many things to the code. Or you know what, if you break your fast like 1 second earlier or later, then your fast is not accepted and you must pay in 60 days. You see, that is a harsh code. That code is harsh. That code is undoable. That code is the product of people. This code that is in the Quran is a doable code. It's a code that is easy to observe. It's not unrealistic to observe that code. And that is why I can't see how. You see, it's easy to see how this code is natural for us to abide by. I'm telling you today, if we only had this code, the Quran, and not the additional 10,000 rules, just this code, we will be removing one massive obstacle from people wanting to buy into this system, into this value system. But because we've created the massive obstacle of hadiths, practice of hadith, people can't see the way, a way to really doing those things. And it becomes cumbersome, it becomes difficult, and it almost becomes impossible for people to abide by it. So, that is really. But now the theme of the discussion is the hijacking of the message. And I think maybe I should just spend a bit of time on that, and then we can maybe wrap up. You see, the idea that the Quran has been superseded or eclipsed by tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of ideas that were created after the Quran, or that are ascribed to the Prophet. That idea has to be investigated, and that is what because I had to understand, why is this idea, why is there an eclipsing of the core code? Because the core code, the authentic code, is very simple, is doable. Anyone can do it. Christian, Muslim, atheist, anyone can look at the code and say, look, this code is not, it's actually saying that there is a supreme creator, number one. Number two, it says there is a day of resurrection. Number three, it says there are envoys or prophets that are there to establish or to spread this message. Number four, it says that we have to behave in a particular way that will create greater harmony, greater peace and stability and friendship amongst people. It says that there's a certain way you deal with your partner in life, with your wife or your husband. There's a certain way that you deal with your parents, with the poor, with the less fortunate. And there's a certain way that you've got to do your business, your funding. For example, interest-based transactions are a taboo. It's outlawed in the code. Anyone can abide by that code. That's not a difficult code. And I really am struggling to think what more is there in that code. To spread a moral, contaminated lifestyle, to establish that, That is part of the code, to shun or abandon illicit sexual relations, or illicit, what is called random sex. That's the code. And the code is not difficult. And so if we only could go back to that code, then it would be much, much more easier for people to get into it. Now the question is, why is this code abandoned? Why is there an eclipsing of this code? And believe me, it actually brings together the ideas of, if you want to destroy something, you don't oppose it, you pervert it. Right? If you want to destroy something, you don't oppose it, you just make it ridiculous, you just pervert it. And in the time shortly after the Prophet ﷺ, when the corrupt kings grabbed power, because the Prophet had a particular way of dealing, and it was a very pluralistic way. In fact, the Charter of Medina allows Jews to practice their religion, to be judged according to their law. So it was a pluralistic, very tolerant, maybe not the word tolerant, but a very broadly accommodating, I think that's the word, a very accommodating system. The city-state of Medina, the Prophet at the head of it, implemented a very accommodating system where Jews could do their thing. If they were Christians, they could do the way they want to practice. Muslims had their practice. And they all formed a political union. So politically, they were all united. Then came the corrupt kings, a number of years after the Prophet passed away. Then came the corrupt kings, starting with King Muawiyah. And if you look carefully at where the invention of hadith really went into full swing, then it is in the time of the Caliph Muawiyah, the kingdom or the house of the Umayyads. Because why? It was, as you can see today, an act of hijacking the main core ideas and diverting the mind to the trivial. It is, when magicians want to draw your attention from the big thing, they distract you with the small thing. That is one of the secrets of conjuring, is that you fool them by drawing their attention away from the big thing. Let's say they want to make a woman disappear from a box or whatever. What they will do is they will, for that brief moment, show you some sort of shiny object in the other hand. And for that moment, you are completely distracted from looking at the box. And for that second or few seconds, you are distracted, and your attention is on the shiny object. And the reason why those corrupt kings had to allow this deviation, this hair splitting, this becoming lost in detail, in the minutiae, is because when the people were fighting about nonsense, they forgot the big things. I always remember this saying from Ibn Abbas. Is it Ibn Abbas? Yeah. A famous scholar told me this, and this is a hadith, but it's not a hadith of the Prophet, it's a saying of Ibn Abbas. At the time of Karbala, he was alive during that time, the year 61 after Hijrah. Now, obviously, it's a big thing to kill the grandson of the Prophet. It's a massive thing. The Umayyad king, he committed the worst atrocity by killing the Prophet's grandson. So what Ibn Abbas says is that, he says the people, he was a scholar, I think he operated around Kufa in Iraq. He had a school there, he had some students there, and people would come to him for fatwas. They asked him, like, Sheikh, what must I do in this case, what must I do? And he was irritated one day. This is a story that that I always remember. He was irritated one day because he says, people came to ask me yesterday whether killing a fly is haram when you're in ihram. People came to ask me yesterday whether you can kill a fly when you are in ihram. You all know what is ihram. But nobody asks me, is it halal to kill the grandson of the Prophet? Nobody has asked me, is it halal to kill the grandson of the Prophet? But they've asked me, is it halal to kill a fly? Ibn Abbas, one of the first generation of great, fuqaha. And so, I think that story illustrates so beautifully how the people were distracted from the big issues. And they were cleverly led to look at the nonsense. That's the only explanation I can get. And they were useful people that could generate heaps and heaps of nonsense. There were numerous people. You go and read some of the stories of Abu Huraira, how the devil came to steal money, and weird stories, weird stories. Stories that, even if you're a child, those stories would sound senseless. But those stories, people started falling for those stories. And then came the detailed nonsense, and the additional aspects of the code. Right? I just read yesterday somebody was sending me something on WhatsApp, where somebody says that it's haram to play with the dice, with these square cube dice, because there's so and so a hadith, and that hadith says, and according to who is it now? I don't know if it's Abu Huraira, but according to one of these narrators, if you play any game with dice, then you will meet God as if you dipped your hand in pig blood. It is the same as though you dipped your hand in the blood of a pig. People really ate up these stories. And while they were eating up these stories, they stopped worrying about whether the king was murdering the innocent, whether the king was robbing the treasury of the country, whether the king was abandoning the original mission, whether the king was enriching and glamorizing and is elevating himself. And the people were lost in how must you keep your toes in salah, how must you keep your fingers, how must you keep your hands, and this became the Islam. Meanwhile, the kings became the worst tyrants. And so the whole story just completely makes sense. The message, the original code, the original discourse is one of emancipation, is one of freeing people from bondage, is one of freeing people from their own vice, from their own capacity to be immoral and weak and complicitous in their own destruction. Islam is there as a force of emancipation, to emancipate you from yourself, from the tyranny of others. But that Islam is now no longer. You see, that Islam is now replaced by some sort of personal endurance test. How many salahs, how many rakats can I make? 4, 8, 12? You're not a good Muslim until you've made, so many. How many hours must I sleep? 8, 6, 4? No. Got to sleep almost nothing. No sleep. And so now it becomes a personal endurance test. The idea of it being a revolutionary the Qur'an being a revolutionary manifesto for the liberation of people globally, not just the Muslims. The idea of the Qur'an being a manifesto for the intellectual, for the moral, for the social emancipation of people everywhere is now abandoned. Why? Because the king is more secure. It is more secure for me to let these sheeple worry about their toes and about nonsense. It's more beneficial for me, because the day they wake up and say that, look, but why is this interest-based system killing us? It's making us poor. That day is the day that my overlordship comes under threat. Okay, let me quickly read a message here. As a white American man, I may have never converted from Christianity if my introduction to Islam was by way of hadith rather than Qur'an. Thank you for your message, my friend. I really appreciate this. I'm going to read it nice. I'm going to give it some I'm going to do justice to your message. It's the only one I've got here. So let me just do some justice. As a white American man, I may have never converted from Christianity if my introduction to Islam was by way of hadith rather than Quran. Many of my fellow white American men are fundamentally Muslim, but struggle to actualize it because of the effort to conflate the cultural image that people commonly associate with Islam. White men don't want to feel pressured to play dress up and pretend to be Arab. Our community would grow rapidly without that additional nonsense if we simply shared teachings of our holy book. This is okay. So thank you for the words of thanks. This is partly why I value your work so much. You know what? It just gives me an amazing feeling when I read this, because I could never have dreamed that I would touch somebody sitting on the other side of the planet, and we've got technology and we are able to do this, my friend. And I've been inspired by the Quran. Believe me, you know, I was a Muslim, and I thought I'm a great Muslim. I was never happy. I never felt fulfilled. I'll tell you the honest truth now. I was a man with a chip on my shoulder. That was what I was. I was walking around with eyes that were judging everything around me. If I see a woman and she appears to be Muslim, I would judge, you know, the way she's dressed. And given an opportunity, I would even make it known that I disapprove. If I see a young man doing a certain thing in a particular way, I would judge him according to my myriad of hadith, laws and ideas that I've been brainwashed with. Remember I told you where I got the brainwashing. And so I became a man with a chip on the shoulder. It was terrible. It was a terrible life. You know, I had a gripe with the world because I had to do this endurance thing. I had to dress. I had to do these things, these millions of fine minutiae. You go to the toilet, you come out of the toilet. Why? I felt abused. But at the same time, there was the cognitive dissonance that if I don't do it, I'm not a good person. And then suddenly one day when I read the Quran, I saw that these things are nowhere to be found. These things have been invented 1300 years ago. And they were invented maybe with good reason. I mean, I don't have a problem with people doing things in a certain way in Arabia. It might work for them. But, I mean, in our times, it's very difficult. Very difficult. Some of the things don't even make sense. You know, if you touch a woman, your wudu is broken. You touch a woman, you must go and wash your feet again. What the heck? Why? But then the one has a certain version of God's will. Like, you touch a woman, Shafi'i says, your wudu is not broken. Vice versa. Shafi, you touch a woman, your wudu is broken. Muslims will know what I'm talking about. Sorry for the rest. Go and figure it out. Hanafi says, if you touch a woman, it's okay, your wudu is not broken. But these are key issues because they have an impact on your life. They have an impact on your life, and it's difficult to really make sense of it. Right, so I think the point is that the story that I've been, the model of the understanding that I've offered you now is that there's a code in the Qur'an. It's a very straightforward code. It's not a complicated code. If you read the Qur'an once over, you'll see that there's nothing extraordinary in that code. Obviously, there's a couple of core differences with Western society. Like Western society promotes permissiveness, sexual permissiveness. It promotes licentiousness. It promotes random or what we call casual sex. The position of the Quran is sex is fine, but it's got to come with a particular set of guarantees. You cannot just go and impregnate a female. Because it's easy. Because then one man can impregnate 500 women and have 500 babies. And what will pick up the social mess that will create? So, and then they say no, but birth control. No, in Western society, birth control is not. Then they bring in abortion. You know how traumatic is abortion on the woman? Because you've deviated from the divine code, and now you have to create solutions to fix your deviation, the problems which your deviation is caused. So the code does differ from Western society. That I must be clear about. I'm not one of those Muslims who say that, you know what, if we can just tune the Quran to look more like Western society, then we'll be fine. No, that's nonsense. That is not revision. Then you are talking capitulation. Then you are surrendering to the devil. And that is not my project is not surrendering to the devil. My project is coming to the authentic, true message of the Quran. So, let me just quickly, Western society definitely contains certain aspects which we as Muslim societies have abandoned. So, if you look at Western society, and I've experience with Western society, I've lived in a Western type society for many years. And there are certain things that I love about Western society, that I wish Muslims could inculcate in themselves. I wish Muslims could be more honest in their business dealings. I wish Muslims didn't try to catch each other or outsmart or have so much deception in their business dealings. I wish they would be more socially conscious and not just do things that solves their own problem. I wish Muslims could be more rational, and when they advance an argument, base it on common sense and not what they see in a hadith book. You see, these are the things that I wish Muslims could inculcate that I see in Western society. You know, one guy told me once, I was visiting Saudi Arabia, and as an old man, we stayed at his bait, at his building, and he tells us, you know, who are the best Arabs? The best Arabs, the ones that you can get along with the easiest, are the Arabs that were educated in America. The young Arabs that come back from Harvard, Princeton, and UCLA, and whatever. They are the easiest to deal with because they have a certain respect that they acquire there for their fellow human being, which they don't have when they're here. And that's a fact. And it was very interesting that this old man who lived in that country could make that observation. And that's why I say we are not here advancing something that is anti-Western culture or pro-Western culture. We're advancing the code of the Qur'an. And at times, this code is in agreement with Western practice, and at times it is more in agreement with some practice in the East. Like the sexual promiscuity, definitely. I wouldn't dream of teaching my children to follow the West. Or when it comes to the interest-based banking system, I wouldn't dream of giving any credence or any endorsement of the Western banking system, because that is a system of pure evil. It's a system of annihilating the average man and elevating the man with money. It makes the man with money get only stronger, and it makes the man who needs money, it kicks him in the gutter. The interest-based system, because it is basically about swapping something of greater value for something of less value. That is the story of interest. And I'll do a episode on how Western banks actually use, how they con the masses into impoverishing themselves over time. Because it's all about swapping assets for cash. And cash is something that is eroded every day. Cash always loses value, and assets always maintain their value or become more valuable. So you want to give the people the cash and take the assets. And people create assets. The banks don't create assets. The bank creates money. So the bank creates something that is flimsy. That has no intrinsic value. And people create amazing things through their ingenuity, through their skill, through their effort. And you swap what they create, real things, for this fictitious invention called money. And that is really how the interest-based system works. So I wouldn't dream of ever teaching that to my children, interest-based system, the degraded morality of Western societies. Not all, but that is being promoted as the mainstream in the West. But then I mean, the Muslim societies, I wish they could have the rational approach. They could have that sense of a sense of community, where they are not just self-interested, but that there is a sense of social, civic duty. Because the idea of civic duty doesn't exist in Muslim societies. I live in a community here where every few months the community, and this is not, I'm going to be contentious here, but this is a very 50-50 community. We have about 50% Muslims and about 50%, let's say, non-Muslim. I don't like that word, but let's say non-Muslims. So every few months we have a project. We have a beautiful lake, and it's like it's what you call a nature reserve. And it used to be a whites only area, right? It's now changed after the fall of apartheid. So now there are many Muslims here, 50, maybe more, even 60%, 70% Muslims, somewhere around there. So every few months or so, the community has a community organization, an NGO of sorts, that keeps the lake clean and cuts the lawn and picks up the dirt and just makes the place look decent. And every few months or so, you get the people invited to a day of cleaning, a day of picking up dirt, papers and when you go to those events, you basically see, although the Muslims might be 50%, you basically see like 10% will be Muslim and 90% will be non-Muslim, if I can use that term. So that civic duty, is what I really admire. The sense of doing something not for any money, but just to make the area look nice. And I wish Muslim communities could have more of that. And that is why we need to develop a sense of humility. We must stop being those who have given themselves the right to judge the rest of humanity. That is the chip on the shoulder, is that we've given ourselves Herrenvolk powers, Ubermensch powers. Khairul, what is the word? The word is the best of peoples, by misreading the verse. We've given ourselves that power now. And now we've become those who sit in judgment over the rest. What a foolish, stupid outlook that is. What a silly, rubbish outlook that is on humanity. That you give yourself that elevated power to judge the rest of humanity. Some people tell me that if they're buying a used car, they don't buy it from a Muslim. They buy it from a white guy. That's true. And that speaks volumes. That speaks volumes, my friends. Of course there are exceptions. I'm not making blanket statements. I'm just giving you a taste of what reality is like. When Muslims become well off, when they have accumulated enough money, where do they move to? Where do they want to buy a home? We need to check up, like Imam Wallace D. Muhammad said that time, a check-up from the neck up. That's what we need, a check-up from the neck up. We need to examine ourselves. We need to, first of all, park that God complex. Park it, and park it forever. Don't ever go back to it. Because you know what? The scholars have told you that if you follow hadith, you are the best of people. And you can sit in judgment of other people. And you are a little mini king. You're a mini king, a mini god. You are going to heaven, and those people are all going to burn in hell. That God complex is the one that I'm saying. We need to abandon it. The sooner the better. We need to become humble. We need to understand that we are fellow sinners and fallible human beings. We are trying to improve every day ourselves. The Qur'an says be a charitable person. Alladhina yunfiquna. Those who are charitable. It comes over and over, it appears in the Qur'an. What is a charitable person? What is a charitable person? A charitable person is a person that has a sense of volunteerism. That is a charitable person. A person that is prepared to surrender his time, his money, or whatever else he has to share and surrender. That is a charitable person. No, but the Muslims have changed that now. Charitable person is to give 10 loaves of bread out of my 2 million rand profit for the year. I'm going to give bread out. So what the Muslims will do is they will misinterpret the idea of being a charitable person. They will reduce it to giving out some, whereas the word charity can include the sense of volunteerism. Go and pick up some dirt in your community. Go and teach some kids how to do their maths who are unable to pass maths. Go and open up a clinic in an area where people can't afford. Go and give a lecture to some drug addicts and try and help them on the road. Go and visit an old age home and just visit an old person and let them feel a bit good for the day. Or read them a book or something. Go and visit your family that you haven't seen in a long time. That is charitable. That is charitable. But what I see is that your average Muslim, okay, I'm going to be contentious again now. They will underpay their worker. They will underpay their worker. the guy or the man or the woman who's working for them will work for peanuts. And then he will go and give 1,000 rand to Gift of the Givers, because he feels, that is reward. We've been a miser and a stingy, a niggardly person when it comes to paying your worker. But you want to give 1,000 rand to Gift of the Givers. You're not being charitable. You're fooling yourself, my friend. You're fooling yourself. You first pay your worker what his due is, and then you go and give 1,000 rand charity to the charity institution, where you go and give out 10 loaves of bread. And by the way, give people bread. Stop giving people bread, man. Maybe bread is not the healthiest thing. So I'm being critical here. The point I'm trying to make is that your deen, your religion, your code, your discourse has been hijacked. You've been given a bill of goods here. The gold is gone, and you are now sitting with 5 bags of charcoal. And the kings took the gold, and they've given you 10 bags of charcoal. That's your Islam. Unfortunately, it's true. And you have remnants. You have remnants of Islam. You have remnants. You have little pieces of Islam. But the main core aspects are gone. One of the main core aspects is to have a just person in charge of your affairs, to elect or to appoint or to recognize the most upright and just person at the helm of your affairs. And what do? They appoint the worst type of people to rule over them. The Qur'an is very clear. It says, Ati'u Allah wa ati'u Rasul wa ulil amri minkum. Obey God, obey the messenger, and those in authority. So it's an and. Obey God and obey the messenger, and there's an and. So it's not say obey God or obey the messenger or obey those in authority. If it was an or, then you could say I must obey the corrupt king. But it doesn't say or. You see, it doesn't say you can obey God or you can obey your king. It says obey God and obey your king. Now, how do you obey your king and not obey God? So in other words, the Quran forces your king to obey God. The Quran forces the king to be obedient to God, because otherwise you can't obey God if you're obeying a corrupt king. You understand? If the Quran had said obey God, atiullah, or atiu ulil amri minkum, or obey, then we could tolerate all these corrupt devils that are ruling the Muslim world. So just that one verse in the Quran forces Muslims to kick out the devils that are ruling them, the corrupt money junkies, the kings that are stealing the wealth and that are spreading whatever evil they are busy or involved with. So we are busy with a religion, with an Islam that we think, okay, I'm going to earn my heaven with this Islam, and meanwhile you're busy with something that is not going to take you anywhere near Jannah. And this is an opportunity here. This broadcast that you're seeing here is your opportunity to say, today I make a change. Today I take a different direction. Let me park all this other stuff. Let me look at the Quran again. Let me take the Quran. I suggest you take the version of Muhammad Assad. You take the version of Shakir. you take the version of Pickthall, you take the version of Muhammad Ali. Take those. Don't take the Mecca, that Mus'haf Medina, please. That thing, they put words in there that is not in the Arabic. I can prove it to you at some stage. I'll prove it to you. You read the Qur'an that is not imposing words that are not there. Take that Qur'an, start reading it, and see if it comes anywhere near the stuff that you are being sold in the mosque on a Friday or in madrasa. What you'll find is that there's a complete different image that comes out in that book. Completely different. It's a very satisfying feeling because it's a doable thing. You see, what makes the Quran so satisfying is because it's doable and it's so in tune with human nature. It's so in tune with human nature. You know, being a sex perverted person sexually, you know it's not good. You know it's destructive. And the Quran will endorse it for you. So it will make you feel that yes, it is confirming what I suspected, that this is not good. Sleeping with 3 women every day and having 60 children, as many men do in the West, in certain communities, or having 250,000 babies aborted every year. You will know in your heart it's not good. It doesn't feel right, it doesn't smell right. You know in your heart that this riba interest-based system where the banks are printing money and selling it to the people for real goods, exchanging their money for real assets, because that's what they do. That's what they do. That's what they do. You know it doesn't smell right. You know you are getting poorer. You know that R1 million 10 years ago is not $1 million. $1 million of 10 years ago is not $1 million now. It's 800. It's half of that. So you know that these things are not smelling right, and the Quran is just telling you what you suspect is correct. These things are indeed destructive. And what the Quran is using is a very logical, rational appeal to you. So I pray that you will use this message, that you will get, you will see the point that the Quran, the code that the Quran is pushing or espousing is a code that is in harmony with human beings. But now I've heard one person say, yeah, but you know what, Anwar, sexual promiscuity is normal because the animals do it. Sleeping around and being free sexually, it's natural because the animals do it. And I mean, if the animals do it, it means it's natural. The Quran is an answer for you. The Quran is an answer for you. I'm going to close with this. Let me show you this verse in the Quran. I'm going to give you something nice now to ponder over. You're going to like what I'm going to show you now. The Quran says, look at this verse, yeah. Tell them, now should I enlighten you as to who will earn an even more disgraceful outcome from God than these? It is he who earns God's damnation and anger, the kind he reduced to the likes of monkeys and pigs when they are caught in worshipping abomination. Such are the ones who will reap the vilest of outcome, being furthest from the even path. You know what? The Quran is not using the word pigs and monkeys for nothing here. And that's one thing I've learned about this book. Nothing is random. The sheikhs, the maulanas, they used to make it sound as if the Quran is just random. You can just, words are just like put there. There's no real point or purpose to the word. The word is there and you just accept it. But with my study of the Quran, I've learned that every word is carefully chosen by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the creator of the universe. His knowledge is so boundless every word, you must pay attention to every word. Because if the master intelligence of the universe put that word there, he didn't put it there for a joke. So coming back to the point I was making, that the Qur'an is telling people, because this is the argument of these people who promote licentious sexual behavior, right? Is that the animals do it, it's natural, so we must do it. We are in tune with nature. The Quran is saying you are not in tune with nature, you are in tune with monkeys and pigs. That's what you are. You are in tune with monkeys and pigs. And it doesn't sound nice when you see it. Monkeys and pigs. Who wants to be a monkey? That's an insult. Who wants to be a pig? That's an insult. But here comes the really powerful point I want to make here. I was wondering why monkeys and pigs. Because I have the luxury, and I thank Almighty Allah that I have the luxury of contemplating and reflecting on the words of the Quran. And it has given me a fairly decent education in science, mathematics, astronomy. Alhamdulillah, with the grace of Allah, I've been given a better understanding than most people due to my formal education and my informal reading. Right? Why would God use the word monkeys and pigs when He speaks about these licentious people who are permissive and just promote casual morality? It took me very long. What do you think? I'm going to give this as a challenge to you. Look at those two words, monkeys and pigs. And you tell me what is there that is common between monkeys and pigs? What is there that is common between monkeys and pigs? Do you want me to give you the answer? And I think I'm going to close with this, because we've been going for just short of 2 hours, but I'm going to leave you with this. I couldn't get to what is similar, and then it struck me just like that. It struck me. What is the closest animal in resemblance to a human being? What is the closest animal in resemblance to a human being? It's an ape. Right or wrong? It's an ape. And then I thought, but now what about the pig? And I typed in, what is the closest animal in physiology? In other words, in our inner parts, like in the way our heart functions and the way our gut functions and the way our nervous system. And I asked that question, what is the closest animal in terms of physiology to humans? Just go and do it and you'll see. The answer is the pig. The pig is the closest, resembles human beings, the closest in terms of physiology. There's not even competition. Monkeys are not physiologically very similar. Pigs are more physiologically similar, the way the organs work. Subhanallah. All praise and all majesty to Almighty Allah. So the Quran knows that, and the Quran says, so those who are promoting this obnoxious, laissez-faire, permissive lifestyle where they worship abomination or shameful acts and practices, He reduced them to the likes of monkeys and pigs. In other words, the nearest thing to a human being, but that is subhuman, is a monkey. And in terms of physiology, is a pig. So you have taken a step down. If you want to argue that it's natural to sleep around. It's natural to have 100 partners, because you know what, the lions also do it. You have become, in your makeup, you have declared yourself to be a monkey and a pig. And I think the bottom line, the point that I want to make, like in conclusion with this particular argument, is that there's nature, there's animal nature, and there's human nature in the Quran. Animal nature is pre-programmed. Human nature is quite different from animal nature. You cannot build sexual morality on animal nature. You build it on human nature. And human nature is something quite apart from animal nature, as the Qur'an confirms in this verse here. Is that animal nature, we are not here as a species to imitate animal nature. We are here to instill and inculcate human nature, which is something completely different. Something completely different. So I guess I'm going to wrap it up on that note. I just got one message here, and it was a beautiful message. I don't mind. I have some more messages. Okay, so let's quickly see. I have yes. Assalamu alaikum. Iron Man. Assalamu alaikum. I'm in the class. I loved, for example, the birds in Salat. Okay, shukran for that. Afwan. Don't blame me for using Arabic terms here. We actually use Malay terms also here in this part of it. Terima kasih. You won't believe it, but we like the Malay words also. Terima kasih, my Malay friends out there. We are very fond of Malay words here also. This is our Malay heritage. We are now in the third phase of Islamic awareness, alhamdulillah. Wow, what brilliant words from Ibn Abbas. Greetings. Hedonism. Yes, absolutely. Hedonism is actually a good word for what I've just discussed now. So, guys, I've had 106 views in total. Not everyone sat through for 2 hours. Some people sat for 5 minutes. Average view duration 12 minutes, which is, I'm very happy with that. You know, I've made it on a Friday because the viewers overseas in America, they're just basically settling down after a tough week. You might still be at work if you're working, and it's a good thing to like just tune in maybe in the afternoon before you get to knock off. For us here on the line, the Greenwich Mean Time line, or just slightly east, it's evening here. I feel I'm great or happy with you if you're lying in bed, falling asleep. I love that myself, putting on something nice and just falling asleep with that stuff in my ears. And if I can be that guy for you, I'm happy. So I'm going to wrap it up here. It's 11:07 p.m. local time here, and I think I have members of my household that are still awake waiting for me to get done. So guys, it was great sitting with you for 2 hours. I hope you've enjoyed at least some of the stuff, and I'm going to love and leave you on that note. If there's anyone that wants to say something still, feel free, go for it. If you'd like to say something, just use the YouTube message area and feel free to send a message. You can also go on WhatsApp. I put you, the WhatsApp number is there, and I'll read your message. If you want to call, you can, but I think right now I think I've more or less covered the topic. The topic was the hijacking of the Islamic of the original Quranic discourse, and I think I've given you a picture. If you didn't sit here for 2 hours, you wouldn't get that picture. But maybe if you watched a lot of my videos, you'll get the picture there. That is really the gist of the argument that I'm making, is that Islam is something that is much more easy, simple, doable, in tune with human nature. You don't have to wear Arabic clothes. You don't have to practice certain practices. It comes down to the essential aspects of being a good person, being a charitable person, being a brave person, confronting, through speaking truth to power. I mean, what is Musa and Fir'aun if not a case study in speaking truth to power? Tell me that. The most common story in the Quran, the most often repeated story in the Qur'an is Moses confronting Pharaoh. And if you can give that story a heading, the heading would be speaking truth to power. Now you're going to tell me that there's no speaking truth to power in Islam? No, then you're in La La Land. Then your Islam is also, you're welcome to, fairyland Islam. This Islam is Islam that is about establishing a just society, speaking the truth, standing for truth, and being a charitable human being. My dear friends, I'm going to sign off. And again, thank you for all of you for tuning in. I didn't even get to the questions. I had a number of questions that came in before the broadcast. So I think I'll do it next time, and maybe I'll get some nice a guest also with me here. So, au revoir. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. I leave you in the protection and in the care of Almighty Allah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.